everybody be outside having fun. Eating fresh fruits and vegetables and good food. Put me in the mood for a festival.
Walk into any fruit market in the peak of summer. The color still pulls you in. The piles still look generous. The promise of sweetness is still there. Nothing seems out of place at first glance. But something underneath is shifting, quietly and steadily. Farmers are beginning to notice it in their orchards. Scientists are beginning to measure it in patterns. Heat is arriving earlier. Winters are softening. Even rain is becoming less predictable. And fruits are responding in ways we don't immediately see, not in appearance, but in structure, in ripening and in flavor. Because what is changing is not just the season anymore. It is the chemistry of taste itself.
Walk through any fruit market this summer and everything looks just as it should. Bright colors, familiar varieties and juicy fruits just waiting to be relished. But beneath the surface of those fruits, something has shifted. Not loud enough to shock, but steady enough to matter. Farmers are noticing it, scientists are tracking it, and you might taste it too. In India, this shift is already visible in lychees. Bihar produces nearly 3/4 of the country's supply, and Muzaffarpur's Shah lychee, once prized for its sweetness and color, is now showing signs of stress. Lychee is a delicate crop. Temperatures above 38 degrees can damage it. The skin darkens, the pulp dries out. In many cases, the fruit drops before it matures. Winter matters just as much. Lychee trees rely on a cool, dry spell to trigger flowering. But winters are getting shorter and warmer. That means they are less reliable. The result is simple: fewer flowers, fewer fruits. The most critical phase comes just before the monsoon, and that phase is breaking down. Heat waves, hot winds, unseasonal rain, all hitting at the worst possible time. In some orchards, losses have reached nearly 50%. Rain creates another problem. It disrupts pollination. No pollination means no fruit, and without stable weather, harvests become unpredictable. This goes far beyond lychees. It's happening across crops. Grapes are getting sweeter but losing acidity. Apples are turning softer, less crisp. Strawberries are shrinking with inconsistent flavor. Scientists call this a shift in flavor balance. Higher temperatures accelerate sugar production. At the same time, acids drop. What you get is fruit that tastes sweet but lacks depth. Texture is changing too. Without enough winter chill, apples lose their crunch. Heat stress affects pigments, leaving fruit softer, paler, and more fragile. This isn't just about lower yields, it's about transformation, from flowering patterns to ripening cycles, all the way to the final taste. And the change doesn't always show up at first glance. The fruit still looks normal, it still reaches your table. But take a bite, something feels off, less sharp, less layered, less nostalgic. Because this is how climate change shows up. Quietly, season after season, until even something as simple as fruit no longer tastes the way it used to.
A terrible thing to waste. Environmental racism and its assault on the American mind. Written by Harriet A. Washington.
At-home hair dye kits are something many people use, but what's really in those bottles? A new Consumer Reports investigation reveals some popular brands contain chemicals linked to potential health risks.
Julissa Nunez prefers the convenience of dyeing her own hair at home, not only to save money, but also to avoid the long hours at the hair salon.
Going to a salon would take me 4 or 5 hours versus me doing it at home, where it'll take me like 2 hours.
Store-bought hair dyes have been widely used for decades, and people have reported reactions such as skin irritation, itching, or burning. Consumer Reports tested 21 permanent, semi-permanent, and 2 hair chalks from major brands at an independent lab, screening the samples for volatile organic compounds, or VOX, phthalates, and heavy metals. The results? Every product CR tested contained contaminants, but some had fewer toxins than others. With repeated use over time, some of these chemicals are linked to an increased risk of cancer, hormone disruption, or other health concerns.
Consumers deserve to actually know what's in the product, not just what the label actually lists. The research from our studies has reinforced that chronic, repeated exposure of hair dyes is actually a real concern.
Hair dye chemicals can be absorbed through the scalp, inhaled during application, or enter the body through irritated skin.
Products that are labeled as clean, natural, organic, or ammonia-free are not necessarily safer alternatives with respect to heavy metals, VOCs, and phthalates.
The Personal Care Products Council, an industry group, says hair dyes are extensively tested and deemed safe, supported by decades of rigorous scientific research and consumer safety evaluations. If you use hair dyes, Consumer Reports suggests wearing gloves and using the products in well-ventilated areas. Perform a 48-hour patch test on a small area of skin prior to applying dye over the entire scalp. It's also important to never apply hair dye to irritated or broken skin. And if you have chemically straightened hair, experts recommend waiting at least a few weeks after using relaxers before using hair dye of any kind.
If you color your hair, consider using temporary or semi-permanent dyes. They may lower your exposure to some of the harsher chemicals found in permanent options. And check whether it has an expiration date. Hair dyes don't last forever, and using them past their shelf life can actually damage your hair or scalp.
I dwell within the land of spins, meant for many men, not my tone.
If it's caught early, treatment for colorectal cancer is fairly simple, and yet it has become the most lethal cancer for people under 50. So experts say more people ought to be talking about basic bodily functions, and listeners, that is your warning. It's exactly what we will be discussing in this story. NPR's Yuki Noguchi has more.
Dr. Neil Parikh finds it so disheartening seeing more young adults die of colorectal cancers that are preventable.
It's disappointing, right? This is a cancer that if you find a polyp, a little pimple on the inside, and you remove it, you can prevent it. Yet we still are seeing this uprise.
Colonoscopies and fecal tests like FIT or Cologuard are effective at screening. Not enough people get them. So Parikh, a gastroenterologist at Hartford Hospital in Connecticut, says what we really need is more toilet talk.
I think the first thing is just having more conversations. We need to talk more about poop.
He says it's the key adult demographic that least discusses things scatological.
I mean, if you mention farting to my 8-year-old, they love it, but yet then we can't fart in public for the next 40 years of our life. My grandparents or my great aunts and uncles can't stop talking how much we can't poop, right? I mean, it's this strange thing we do as humans.
People in their 30s and 40s are less likely to mention warning signs, symptoms like bloody stools or changes in regularity.
Last time another 40-year-old told me they had a good bowel movement, that's a rare conversation.
That embarrassment can perpetuate. In Rick Rivers' family, for example, no one ever told him his grandfather died of colorectal cancer until Rivers himself was diagnosed at age 31.
There's a shame factor to talking about certain areas of your body and them not functioning the way that they're supposed to.
13 years and many major surgeries later, Rivers, a father of 3 boys in Williamstown, New Jersey, is cancer-free. He says cancer itself was a taboo topic in his family. Yet colorectal cancer strikes and kills more black men like himself. Rivers is working to change that.
That is definitely something I try to champion whenever I talk to some of the guys my age, whether I'm, taking the boys to practice or, family events, friends gatherings, stuff like that.
Michael Sapienza, head of the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, says vocal self-advocacy is critical. His group's surveys show younger patients' symptoms often go ignored, delaying diagnosis and treatment. Also, insurance coverage for colonoscopy and other screenings aren't covered until age 45. As a result, he says,
3 out of 4 young people that are diagnosed with the disease have late-stage colorectal cancer.
So those under age 45 with symptoms must ask doctors for diagnostic screenings, but few do. Sapienza says too often either doctors ignore symptoms or patients don't mention them, which again is why many say frank talk is so important. Rick Rivers, the colorectal cancer survivor, says there's no one-size-fits-all way to approach something so deeply personal. He brings it up in the context of a person's life priorities. Like if he's talking to a family man, Rivers will emphasize the desire to live long for the kids.
Speak to that thing that they value most and that they want to keep in their lives, or that they want to stay in other people's lives for a particular reason. That usually works better.
So far, Rivers says he's gotten several people, including other parents and friends, to get screened. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
And that's the one thing I don't want none of you people to do, is ever do some serious thinking. I'd like for you to keep being noisy, talking about nothing. Getting on your cell phones, talking all day, nonstop about nothing. Calling people names. Talking random, worshiping random talk. Any assembly of people that happen to get together somewhere, go over there and check on them and make sure that if there's a slave category, if there's a subservient category, make sure that they are talking nothing but nonsense. Calling each other names and then getting angry and getting in a fight.
If ancient humans could see us today, they would be very confused. The species that built language now communicates with just a K or a thumbs up or even a fire emoji. We build civilizations through communication. Now conversations often end with a scene at 9:42 p.m. Funny, isn't it? But this is also concerning. The world is not using its words as much. We may be talking less. We're not the ones saying it. A new study suggests exactly that. It is by researchers from the University of Missouri, Kansas City and University of Arizona. They looked at how much people speak daily. In fact, they analyzed 22 students, more than 2,000 participants aged between 10 and 94, and their findings are striking. In 2005, a person spoke over 16,000 words a day on average. But by 2019, that number had fallen to around just 12,000 words. That's a drop of 28%, or nearly 4,700 fewer words every day. Over a year, that can add up to about 120,000 less spoken words per person. Simply put, that could mean thousands of conversations that never took place. So why is this happening? There are at least 3 big reasons for this. Number 1, daily life now requires fewer conversations. You can order food on an app, book a taxi also on an app, pay at a self-checkout, track a delivery without calling anyone. So tasks that once needed speech now just need taps. Reason number 2, texting has replaced talking. A quick message is faster than a call, and a reaction emoji is easier than a full response. So convenience is winning. Reason number 3, modern life has become more individualistic. Many people nowadays live alone, many work remotely, and many spend more hours with their screens. Even commute can happen with just your emotional support headphones. That means fewer casual exchanges with others. In fact, researchers have also found another trend. They've seen a steeper drop among younger people. People under 25 lost more daily spoken words than older groups. That may not be surprising. They have grown up with text, group chats, snaps, streaks, and the ability to end a conversation by simply disappearing. But it was not only the young, older adults were talking less too, which suggests that this may be a bigger shift than just a generational shift. It also reflects how daily life has changed for everyone. But why does this matter? Because talking does more than just share information. It carries tone, timing, pause, humor, empathy, and human nuance.
Text messages often struggle to carry all of that. That is why a simple fine often sounds like anything but fine. Then there is something else we often undervalue: small talk. Many people dismiss it as pointless, but it often serves a purpose. A quick chat with a shopkeeper, that quick weather analysis with a neighbor, the short exchange with a security guard, and the hello, how have you been conversation in the lift. These moments may seem ordinary, but they matter more than we think. They help people feel noticed. They create a small sense of connection. They can ease feelings of isolation, and they make public spaces feel more human. There is also a family dimension. Children learn language by listening. They pick up words, rhythm, and expression through daily conversations. So if adults speak less around them, that may affect vocabulary development over time. So what is the takeaway here? It is not that technology is the problem. Technology has made life easier. It saves time, it offers convenience, and it helps people stay connected across distances. But this research does raise a fair question. As we communicate faster, are we also losing some of the depth that comes with real conversations? That does not mean people must reject apps or texting. It may simply mean making room for both. Send the text when it is practical, make the call when it matters, use the app when it helps, speak when the moment allows. Keep the emoji if you like, but do not forget the value of human voice. Because for all the shortcuts, nothing quite lands like a full human conversation.
Trump's a wild guy. He's a wild guy. I'm telling you something he did that made me crazy when he was running for president. When he was running for president, he said this at a debate. He said the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio, were eating people's dogs and cats. That really upset me because I live in Ohio. In fact, what's up, Ohio?
We turn now to the Supreme Court. On Wednesday, the justices heard oral arguments on President Trump's push to strip temporary protected status from 350,000 Haitians and 6,100 Syrians living in the United States. The TPS program grants protection from deportation and work authorization to immigrants whose home countries are deemed unsafe to return to, most often because of war or natural disaster. Last year, then Secretary of DHS Kristi Noem said recent extensions of TPS for Haitians and Syrians were not justified or necessary. In separate lawsuits, the TPS holders charged that the government did not follow proper procedure in making that decision and that their home countries are still unsafe. The cases were combined to be heard before the court Wednesday. The Haitian lawsuit also accuses the Trump administration of being motivated by racism in violation of the U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. District Court Judge Ana Reyes agreed, ruling the decision was likely made because of hostility to non-white immigrants, unquote. This is Jeffrey Pipoli, a lawyer representing the Haitian plaintiffs.
The true reason for the termination is the president's racial animus towards non-white immigrants and bare dislike of Haitians in particular. The president has disparaged Haitian TPS holders specifically as undesirables from a, quote, shithole country, and days after falsely accusing them of, quote, eating the dogs and eating the cats of Americans, he vowed that he would terminate Haiti's TPS. And that is exactly what happened.
All three liberal justices pressed the administration on this question. This is an exchange between Justice Sotomayor and D. John Sauer, the U.S. Solicitor General.
Now, we have a president saying at one point that Haiti is a, quote, filthy, dirty, and disgusting S-hole country. I'm quoting him. And where he complained that the United States takes people from such countries instead of people from Norway, Sweden, or Denmark, where he declared illegal immigrants, which he associated with TPS, as poisoning the blood of America. I don't see how that one statement is not a prime example of the Arlington example at work and showing that a discriminatory purpose may have played a part in this decision?
All the statements that they cite as to the secretary and as to the president, obviously there's an issue there about which one you're going to weigh more heavily. None of them, not a single one of them, mentions race or relates to race.
That was Solicitor General D. John Sauer being questioned by Justice Sonia Sotomayor. The court's 6 conservative justices signaled skepticism over the lower court's rulings and in May had permitted the Trump administration to revoke TPS for Venezuelans in an unsigned shadow docket opinion. This case could ultimately have ramifications for more than 1 million TPS holders from over a dozen countries. For more, we go to Springfield, Ohio, where we're joined by Vilas Dorsenville. He is a TPS holder and a plaintiff in the case. He's also co-founder and executive director of the Haitian Support Center in Springfield, Ohio. President Trump targeted the Haitian community in Springfield, falsely saying Haitian residents were eating pet dogs and cats. Thank you so much for being with us. Vilas Dorsenville, if you can start off by laying out what happened in this case, why you brought it, and where you think the Supreme Court is going.
I think that since after, thank you for having me, I think that since after 2024, we've been scapegoated as a community, and we've been accused of eating pets in the community, and even though the local authority rejected that claim, and we felt the urgency of being the plaintiff in the case, not only in the case of Mio versus Trump, but in the case of the ACLU in Northern California as well, just to bring that our story before the court, because we are here on the TPS and it means a lot to us. And I think that being a plaintiff would mean that we are ready to stand with our people. We are ready to normally let the judicial system or the judicial branch know that we are at a risk of deportation. There could be family separation. There could be normally the economic and community disruption. So when we know how much is at stake if TPS is ended, we agreed to normally be a plaintiff on that case.
And Vilas Dorsenville, what has been the impact on the Haitian community of Springfield since President Trump began his vile and racist statements targeting your community during the 2024 campaign?
I think it has been impacted the community in so many areas. The first thing is that, you know, the leader Trump is normally a leader saying things that maybe he should not say. And because of that, other people who are following him would normally use those conspiracy theory to target us in the community. And the second thing, the impact is because in our community, because of that, folks are afraid because they believe that would escalate to mass violence against them. And the community has been disrupted since then. We are still living with the consequence of those comments. So you would see that folks in the community who understand that would rally with us and stand in solidarity with us, because they know that firsthand that we are people with ethic and moral, and all that we've been looking for is a safe haven and a place to work and continue to send our kids to school. But we've been the victims of a leader that should normally focus on protecting a vulnerable group of people or protecting the communities, but ended up being the person who put some type of labels on people in the community. So it has been a very difficult thing, so unsettling thing for us just to live with. And up to now, we are still normally living with it.
Now, you are a recipient of temporary protected status. Could you tell us your story, why you had to leave Haiti, and what do you say to those Americans who say temporary protected status is supposed to be just that, temporary, not permanent?
I left Haiti because I was a pastor assigned back to Haiti from Jamaica in 2018, and in 2020 I became a target because the hoodlums started asking me money that I didn't have, and my mother suggested that I leave to come to a safer place. This is why I left Haiti, just to come here. And when I came here, I started working with the community, and TPS would mean a lot to me by the fact that it allows me to stay here and to work and to continue to provide for myself and provide for my family. And I believe that it is the same for other members in our community. They are under TPS, they are TPS holders, because at this point in time, the country in Haiti is still in bad shape and they cannot return there. So you can imagine now the uncertainty that they live with on a daily basis by the fact that they know if TPS ends, there is possibility for them to be detained and to be deported. And you can imagine that they feel that they are not safe, even though they came here to be safe. And this is all that is at risk in this particular case.
Hitler had the supreme fascist state. And what was he worried about in Europe and in Germany? He was worried about white genetic annihilation. What is everybody in Europe worried about now? White genetic annihilation. All these people from Syria coming up in here.
Senior citizens are among those paying close attention to a case in front of the Supreme Court. Tomorrow, the justices will consider whether the Trump administration improperly terminated temporary protected status for more than 300,000 Haitians and 6,000 Syrians. NPR's Andrea Hsu explains why the elderly have a stake in the outcome.
At 82, Rita Siebenaler lives in the independent living section of a retirement community in Northern Virginia known as Goodwin Living. Her late husband, an Army veteran, spent his final days in the memory care unit next door.
He had caretakers from Ghana, Sierra Leone, Haiti, and they gave him tender, loving care.
She says some had temporary protected status, a special designation granted to citizens of countries deemed unsafe to return to. The Trump administration points out the status is supposed to be temporary, and since last year the administration has ended or attempted to end TPS for more than 1 million immigrants, citing improved conditions in their home countries despite continued warnings from the State Department. Now, as the issue heads to the Supreme Court, Siebenaler hopes the justices, whose average age is 65, will consider the human toll of forcing valuable workers out. She says immigrants drawn to long-term care work often come from cultures where elders are revered, where caretaking is seen as noble.
They've already been vetted and have work permits, and they ought to be allowed to continue. We need them.
Already, Goodwin Living has had to let some workers go. 4 Haitian dining workers lost their work authorization after the Trump administration canceled a humanitarian parole program last year.
Our kitchen serves 1,000 meals a day, And all of a sudden, we lost 2 Haitian cooks and 2 kitchen utility workers. That really had an impact.
Sowing anxiety through the rest of the workforce. The research and advocacy group, PHI, estimates the U.S. will need to fill close to 10 million caregiving jobs over the next decade. Siebenaler can't see the logic in paring back the workforce at a time like this.
This has a tremendous impact on American seniors. You know, hundreds of thousands turn 65 every year. Who's going to care for them?
That pressing question is what brought Rita Siebenaler and a bunch of her neighbors out in the rain this morning.
Can everybody see me? Yes!
A couple dozen seniors, some with their rolling walkers, other with folding stools, joined Democratic lawmakers outside the Capitol to call for protections for TPS holders. After the politicians, Siebenaler made her case.
As you age, in spite of your good habits, your bodies fail.
Elders behind her nod knowingly.
Some assistance, of course, comes from families, but often that assistance comes from the caretakers.
Afterwards, glancing over at the Supreme Court, Siebenaler says she's unsure how this is going to play out.
I'm concerned, I'm anxious. I hope the justices pull on the best legal precedents and do something really great for our temporary protected status workers.
And she says she'll be praying about it. Andrea Hsu, NPR News, Washington.
If I had stayed in Wisconsin, I think I would. I honestly question if I would still be living and or what my mental health would be.
Black Wisconsinites are overrepresented through our state's criminal justice system. A new report from the Wisconsin Policy Forum found in 2022, Wisconsin had the second largest disparity of any state between its black and white incarceration rates. In fact, black Wisconsinites were more than 12 times more likely to be incarcerated that year than white Wisconsinites. I talked with research director Joe Peterangelo about the comprehensive look at our prison system. Thanks for joining us this morning, Joe. I want to get started off by just talking about what the key findings were in this report.
Yeah, so we looked at the criminal justice system in the state from top to bottom, sort of from arrest trends, the courts, incarceration, community supervision, and how the criminal justice system is staffed and financed. And so there were a number of key findings that came out of this. One was a trend of growing populations of older adults in the criminal justice system. Racial disparities are another, persistent racial disparities in the justice system.
And you mentioned this, but black Wisconsinites are incarcerated at a higher rate than white Wisconsinites. That disparity is among the worst in the nation. Why is that?
Well, so Wisconsin ranks towards the middle of the states in incarceration overall. We rank 5th in the nation in the incarceration rate of the black population. So when we compare ourselves with other states, we end up with the second biggest disparity. There are states that have higher overall incarceration rates, especially in the South, just in general, there's more people being incarcerated there than in Wisconsin. We just have a particularly big difference between the black population and the white population. Some of that is, big racial disparities in income in Wisconsin, but there are a lot of factors that can contribute to those disparities.
Did the racial disparities in our prison system surprise you, or has data indicated this previously?
Data had indicated that previously. We confirmed that it was still the case, and in comparing Wisconsin with other states, seeing how we fared was still very sobering, I think. I would say the more surprising finding, though, for us was that increase among older adults. It's an issue that hasn't been discussed as much, and so that was a more of a surprising finding.
And I want to talk a little bit about spending here, too. And I'm going to read a stat from that report, which found that Wisconsin actually ranked 12th among the states and 2nd among Midwest states in per capita spending in 2022. Are we set to continue that trend?
I think that it's likely we will, and there are a couple of reasons for that. One, we are with this trend of more older adults in the criminal justice system. What we found is that there's been a big increase in-state spending on healthcare for the correction system. More older adults tend to require more healthcare. There's been some things like, there's been the development of an assisted living facility at one of the state prisons. So that's one trend that is likely to continue to raise the costs.
If the older population ages out of our prison system, could that spending go down in the future?
That's a good question. I think that, I guess I hate to speculate on that. I will say one thing, though, that the older adults, we looked at the rates of reconviction and reincarceration by age, and the older adults are the least likely to be reconvicted and reincarcerated after being released from prison. And so, it's a policy question to be considering, as we're grappling with overcrowding in state prisons, high spending on corrections. That might be one area to look.
That's all I have for you this morning. I appreciate your time.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
After one man tells 11 Alive, jail staff ignored his medical needs for weeks, eventually leading to the loss of multiple limbs. 11 Alive's Chase Howell has the story for us. He's joining us now in the newsroom. So, Chase, how did something like this happen?
Jennifer, that's a great question. Well, Rashad Muhammad says the Fulton County Jail failed to give him medicine for an ongoing medical issue, and it escalated to the point where he says he was vomiting black liquids, and it only got worse from there.
My daughter asked me, Dad, you have vitiligo. This is forever, these scars.
Rashad Muhammad says he spent 18 agonizing days begging and pleading staff at the Fulton County Jail for medical attention.
For days, I'm in the corner by myself, suffering. Nobody's checking on me. Nobody's coming up to me. I'm back there.
According to court records, Muhammad was arrested in August 2025 for allegedly shooting someone. He and his attorney say those charges were eventually dropped. But while in custody, Muhammad says he never received antibiotics to treat an infection related to his suprapubic catheter, something Muhammad says he stressed he needed while going through intake.
Now it's starting to have a stench. The stench is so bad that the other inmates were basically making fun of me.
The stench was the least of Muhammad's problems. He says over time he got sicker after going over 2 weeks without being given his medication after numerous pleas.
So I'm trying to tell the officers, hey, officers, hey, I need to, it's getting bad. Nothing.
Eventually, Muhammad says he was taken to Grady. It was there where he'd learn he was septic and go into a coma, not knowing he'd wake up with his fingers and legs amputated.
For the rest of his life, Rashad Muhammad has to live with the nightmares from the Fulton County Jail because of the failure of the care that he received.
Muhammad's lawyer, Ben Crump, has a singular message to Sheriff Pat Labat.
Fulton County, the blood is on your hands.
While the Fulton County Sheriff's Office says it cannot comment on Muhammad's medical condition or treatment, it did say, quote, it is important to note that of the 188 days Mr. Muhammad was in custody, 177 of those days were spent at Grady under hospital care. During his time at the Fulton County Jail, he was under the medical care of NAFCare. Guys?
All right, Chase, thank you so much. And conditions inside the Fulton County Jail have been under a microscope for years now. In 2024, a Department of Justice investigation found people in Fulton County custody receive inadequate access to medical care. The county later entered a consent decree with the DOJ and announced in February that it invested $12.8 million in jail improvements in 2025, including enhancements to the detainee health care contract.
New York. New York, New York.
A growing number of people are going to court for sleeping or spreading out in New York City's public transit system. A WNYC data analysis shows court cases for these types of violations have skyrocketed since NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch announced a crackdown on transit and quality of life offenses last year. WNYC Samantha Max reports.
Good afternoon, New York.
On February 21st, Mayor Zohran Mamdani urged New Yorkers to stay inside as a blizzard prepared to dump about 2 feet of snow on the city.
To protect our homeless and most vulnerable New Yorkers, Code Blue operations will take effect once again, starting at 4 p.m. this afternoon.
Mamdani said outreach teams would work with the FDNY and NYPD to bring people at risk inside.
Let me be clear. No one will be denied shelter in our city. We want every New Yorker who needs help seeking warmth to be able to find it.
But that's not what happened to Chris Madigan. Several hours later, around 3:30 a.m., he was sleeping on the subway when police body camera footage shows NYPD officers waking him up, arresting him, and escorting him out of the 86th Street station onto Broadway. It wasn't snowing yet, but the temperature was starting to drop. Madigan had no shoes on, only socks.
I remember it was cold. I remember my feet were really cold, like my feet really hurt.
In the hallway of a Manhattan courthouse, Madigan tells me he spent the last several years sleeping on friends' couches and benches around the city. He says he used to work in construction, but his life spiraled out of control after a prescription for painkillers turned into an addiction. Madigan says the night that police arrested him, he had dozed off on the train while under the influence. Body camera video shows him lying down across a row of seats.
I remember being asleep, I remember waking up, and I remember being dragged.
Video of the arrest shows police pulling Madigan off the train by his jacket and telling him he can't sleep on the subway or in the station. After they take him upstairs, the video shows him looking over his shoulder and spinning toward an officer. Madigan was charged with aggravated harassment and ultimately pleaded guilty to a non-criminal violation of disorderly behavior. He says his situation did not need to escalate like that, and that it's a waste of resources for police to focus their attention on people sleeping on the subway.
It's not like anybody's doing anything wrong. It's trying to find a place to be warm.
MTA rules say you cannot occupy more than one seat in public transit or lie on the floor of a station. In 2024, there were 19 court cases where sprawling out in the transit system was the most serious charge. Last year, there were about 600. The numbers are likely an undercount because they do not include cases like Madigan's, when the person was ultimately charged with a more serious crime.
The subways will always be a bellwether for public safety in New York City.
That's Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch speaking at the annual State of the NYPD address in January 2025. She said the NYPD would send a surge of officers into the transit system at night. She also announced a new division dedicated to policing quality of life issues like aggressive panhandling.
For too long, we asked our cops to correct these conditions without sufficient direction. No more.
State court data shows cases for sprawling out in public transit started to rise right around when Tisch made her public commitment to subway and quality of life enforcement. Jillian Snyder is a former NYPD officer who now teaches at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. She says this type of policing aims to deter more serious crimes in the transit system and to boost ridership.
Regular citizens, when they see homeless people encamped on a sidewalk or laying in a subway car, they immediately feel less safe. And that is not that these are dangerous individuals by any means, but it puts forth this perception of incivility.
Snyder says when she was an officer, she was instructed to write tickets for quality of life issues, not take people to jail. But data shows that since January 2025, someone was taken into custody in more than 98% of court cases on a top charge of spreading out in public transit. Snyder says while she does not think subways should be used as ad hoc homeless facilities, she understands homeless people are often afraid to go to shelters or the hospital.
There's not a lot of options out there. So it's like trying to do the best you can, but with little resources and trying to do it in the most practical way possible that's going to keep New Yorkers riding the subway feeling safe.
Michael Sisitsky with the New York Civil Liberties Union says the city should invest in housing for people sleeping in the subway, not arrests.
This approach is a heavy-handed criminalization of a vulnerable population who don't need more policing and criminalization.
Sisitsky says the NYPD's current strategy predates Mayor Mamdani and does not match his professed philosophy on public safety.
It is now incumbent on Commissioner Tisch to adopt a different approach, and we'll be looking to Mayor Mamdani to intervene, to right the ship here.
Lisa Daglian with the Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA says homelessness in public transit is a divisive issue.
There are some martyrs who want to see everybody who they feel shouldn't be on a train taken off a train. There are a lot of people who believe that anybody who needs help should get the help that they need.
Daglian says she hopes the city and state will expand programs to get people sleeping in public transit the help they need. Samantha Max, WNYC News.
The New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, 10th Anniversary Edition, by Michelle Alexander.
Prison guards in New York say the state's correctional system is in crisis. Staffing levels are low, rates of violence and drug exposures are rising. Both guards and inmates are pleading with the state to fix what they say is a broken system. North Country Public Radio's Emily Russell reports.
Last winter, Nate Locke got a call for backup on his prison radio. A fellow correction officer at the state prison where he worked in northern New York needed help with an inmate. The officers believed he was concealing some kind of synthetic drug. 20 minutes later, Locke says everyone who came in contact with that inmate started showing similar symptoms.
The nurses in the ER took blood pressure and it was absolutely through the roof, and eyeballs get dilated, and then I remember getting in the ambulance, and I don't remember anything after that.
Drug tests were inconclusive, but there were other similar incidents that month that ultimately sent dozens of staff members to the hospital. Locke says weeks later, he and hundreds of his coworkers had had enough.
Once officers heard that there was a strike going on, it was, within 48 hours, pretty much the whole facility was out.
That statewide strike lasted nearly 3 weeks. More than 2,000 officers, including Locke, were fired for not returning to work. Jennifer Scaife leads the Correctional Association of New York, a nonprofit oversight agency. Scaife says more than a year later, the system is still stressed.
I see staff who feel that they're not being heard, that they can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, and that they're constantly being asked to do more and more with less and less.
There's also been more violence behind bars. In April, 3 inmates at 3 prisons in northern New York were killed, allegedly by other inmates. Meanwhile, multiple officers at 2 prisons were charged last year in the beating deaths of 2 inmates.
It really does seem to me that the state is continuing to teeter on this edge of crisis.
So how do you right-size a system where the staff is overworked, where drugs are filtering in, and where incarcerated people say even some of their basic needs aren't being met? One way is by hiring help. New York is spending about $45 million a month on National Guard troops to help staff prisons across the state. Meanwhile, the Department of Corrections is focused on recruitment. They've got a 26% staff vacancy rate.
Are you interested in becoming a New York State Correction Officer? Come and see us at the Buffalo Auto Show.
The state has lowered the hiring age to 18 and is offering a $3,000 signing bonus to new officers. Recent recruiting efforts have led to an uptick in the number of graduates from its officer training academy. Advocates and inmates say another way to relieve pressure on the prison system is by offering early release. J.B. Nicholas served more than 12 years behind bars. He's now a journalist in northern New York.
You need to incentivize guys to self-reform better. And the way you incentivize guys to self-reform is by offering them opportunities for early release.
Dangling that kind of carrot could instill more hope and inspire better behavior behind bars, says John J. Lennon. He's been incarcerated for 25 years and is a longtime journalist from prison. Lennon says there's another key change the state should make, actually giving guards more discretion in their use of solitary confinement.
I do believe there should be temporary keep lock put back in, where ultimately that's a cooling off period.
Keep lock is a kind of confinement where an inmate is kept in their cell for up to 23 hours a day. Lennon says giving guards that discretion would make prisons safer for everyone. Correction officers also want the solitary confinement rules loosened. That was one of the proposals laid out in a recent letter from their union to Governor Kathy Hochul. The letter also highlighted the drugs, violence, and recent deaths in New York's prisons, describing conditions as unstable and dangerous. Speaking with reporters recently, the governor said she's also not satisfied with prison conditions. Hochul said the state is focused on hiring new officers, and she highlighted that contraband in prison is down 20% since last year. For NPR News, I'm Emily Russell in Malone, New York.
Last Friday, the Mamdani administration opened another new office in City Hall. You might have not heard about this one yet. This time aimed at tackling a growing issue as property values rise in historically black neighborhoods. It's deed theft. We've done a segment about deed theft previously. Now there's a new Office of Deed Theft Prevention, which will be led by Peter White, who Mamdani described as a longtime supervising attorney for homeowner assistance at the nonprofit organization Access Justice Brooklyn. Now this comes just 2 days after City Council member C.O.W.S was arrested at a protest aimed at intercepting the eviction of a tenant from a brownstone in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. General Letitia James and the buyer, 227 Group LLC, dispute the deed theft characterization that the council member put forward. We'll dig into what's actually going on there in just a moment. The mayor also announced a 6-month moratorium on tax lien sales while the administration reviews the program, which can put homeowners on the path to foreclosure over unpaid bills like water and sewer charges. And we will also talk about the mayor reportedly softening his tone on aspects of this pied-à-terre tax that Governor Hochul proposed and that he's embraced after the company Citadel issued a threat, as Crane's New York Business reported that word. So we're going to get into all of these things with WNYC and Gothamist housing reporter David Brandt. Hi, David. Always good to have you on the show.
Hey, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Simple question, maybe a complicated answer for those who've never heard of this problem. What is deed theft and how does it happen?
It's a simple question, but you're right. It is a complicated answer because it takes many forms. So like you said, this is happening a lot in these neighborhoods, especially predominantly black neighborhoods, Southeast Queens, Central Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, where properties that have been owned by families for a very long time have these very high values, and often there's no mortgage on these properties, and people are lower or middle income living there, and they're being targeted by speculators and investors and outright scammers who want to pry the properties away from them and sell them for a lot more. So that's the incentive or the motivation here. The way they do that is complicated, and where I think this gets complicated, what constitutes deed theft or what is just kind of unethical, or what gets murky with the property ownership here. So in this case in Bed-Stuy that you mentioned where Councilmember C.O.W.S was arrested, I think it kind of captures a lot of this confusion and the murkiness here. So this was a property that was within a family for many years, about 60 years. One of the owners died. Property then reverted to heirs. Some of those heirs signed away their shares to the property. A new LLC buyer stepped in to purchase them. A resident whose family has owned the property for many years has been living there and says, no, I didn't consent to this. My father had an ownership share in this property. He's in a conservatorship. The conservator signed away his share. He wouldn't have done that. And so that's where this gets complicated, because we have to go back in time. How did that conservatorship come around? Why did the conservator sign it away? Other family members said that they were willing to sell the property. And so what constitutes deed theft? What constitutes a property dispute? It gets very, very complicated.
But the big picture is, as you report, that advocates see this as a growing problem for black and Latino households, particularly in central Brooklyn and southeast Queens, whether or not this particular one turns out to be a case of deed theft or not, right?
Exactly right. And I think one of the the functions of this saga right now is to again shed light on this problem that's growing. Over about 10 years, from 2014 to 2023, Attorney General Letitia James' office received about 2,300 complaints of deed theft, basically all of those concentrated in Southeast Queens, Central Brooklyn. Over the past year, that number has increased even more. Back in 2023, I think they received about 150 complaints. Last year, they say they got about 520 complaints. So it's tripled, showing that these are valuable properties, sometimes with contested ownership histories. And so investors and scammers are stepping in to try to get these properties and flip them for a lot more than they're acquiring them for.
So, David, on Friday, the mayor unveiled this new Office of Deed Theft Prevention. Deed theft is already illegal, so what's this new office supposed to do?
Well, he says that the first things they're going to do are raise awareness and warn longtime homeowners about scams and potential for fraud that they might face. Doing that kind of outreach is something that lawmakers, advocacy organizations, the Attorney General have been doing for a while, trying to encourage people to make wills so that the ownership history isn't contested after a longtime owner dies, or to warn about potential scams that they might experience. So I think that's going to be the first thing they do, and then raising awareness to, or highlighting some examples of potential deed theft to law enforcement officials, whether that's the Attorney General or district attorneys in the 5 boroughs, especially in Brooklyn and Queens. So that's going to be their first steps. On the campaign trail, Mamdani pledged to create this office and to fund it with $10 million. Right now they are allocating $500,000, and then next year they want to add $1 million. But he said on the campaign trail he also wants this office to help investigate claims of deed fraud. And Peter White, who is going to be leading this office, I was reading some testimony by him to the state Senate on a hearing about deed theft a few years ago. And he said one of the biggest obstacles is that these are very time-intensive and complicated cases for law enforcement to prove and investigate. So any additional support and funding could make that easier for them.
Tell us about the tax lien sales. What's the issue there?
So Mamdani announced back in March, we were the first to report that he was going to be suspending what he called the, quote, predatory tax lien scheme. So since 1996, the city has sold unpaid tax liens and water debt at a discount to private investors through a trust. And then that trust tries to collect on that debt, and they will impose additional fees and interest on the property owners. And if the property owners are unable to make those payments, they're at risk of foreclosure. So basically, opponents of this say it's targeting a lot of those same neighborhoods, homeowners who fall behind on their property taxes, facing financial hardship, often in Southeast Queens, Central Brooklyn, and then the city sells their debts to the private collection agencies, who then can foreclose eventually on the property. So it's another way to pry homes and properties away from people. He also pledged to do that on the campaign trail. This has been an issue for the last several years, but especially the past 5 years. You know, there's been Mayor de Blasio suspended it. It resumed with some what they call guardrails to try to allow homeowners and property owners to get off of the tax lien list, and then it was reestablished and then suspended again. And so now Mamdani is suspending it for at least 6 months to review the process and maybe formulate some type of alternative for enforcing property tax debts.
On the deed theft, and it relates maybe to the case that Councilmember Osei was trying to spotlight, even though, as you report, Attorney General Letitia James, as well as the buyer, dispute the deed theft characterization that somebody's relative actually owned the property or a share of the property. There's a tactic at the center of a lot of these cases that are more clearly deed theft, as I understand it, where investors buy a partial share from one heir and then force the sale of the entire home. Are you familiar with how that works?
Yeah, that's called partition, and that is a very common tactic. The state tried to crack down on that a couple years ago with new legislation. So if a property has multiple owners, this is especially the case if a longtime owner dies without a will, or a will that doesn't clearly state who the next owner will be. There are multiple shares in that property. It could be people living all across the country or distant relatives who might not even communicate. And so a speculator, real estate investor, could target one of those people and say, I'll buy your share. You own 10% in this brownstone in Crown Heights. You live in Georgia. What are you going to do with that? Here's 10 grand. The person might say, oh, that sounds great. I don't even know the other people who have an interest in this. And then that investor would have been able to force a full sale of the property, either on the market or making the other owners, and that could be like a longtime resident, could be the property owner's son or daughter who's living there and didn't even know about all of these different shares in the property, to buy them out and say, I bought this for $10,000. Listen, you give me $200,000 and now you own the property outright. So the state tried to limit that by preventing investors from forcing the full sale. It's unclear how much that's being enforced or whether that's still going on, but there is a law now that only allows the heirs to force that full sale.
Listener asks, what are the signs family members should look out for that they may be getting deed theft scammed?
Well, one of the measures I think that a lot of the advocates and some lawmakers are calling for is to carve out like harassment zones, so to stop speculators from just showing up at people's doors and saying, I'll buy your house, sign these documents, I'll buy your property, I'll pay you all cash, to try to limit that kind of solicitation. So that's one. If a home is getting solicited a lot, and I've talked to homeowners, I remember talking to one former council member in Southeast Queens whose mom owns a home in St. Albans, Queens, and he said every single day she is getting notices for all cash offers on her very, very valuable home that no longer has a mortgage. And so I think that's one sign. Another sign is just to kind of look at two cases that I've reported on in the past showing how complicated this is. One was a homeowner in Brownsville, Brooklyn, who inherited the property. He had very bad credit and he wanted to take out a loan to do some renovations to the property, but he couldn't get approval for the loan. So someone at his church, he said, was like, you know what, I know someone who can help you out. And so they had a kind of more informal negotiation, he says, and that the guy said, listen, you sign this property over to me, I'll get this loan for you, I'll sign it back over to you. Person never did that, sold the property to another LLC that flipped it to another LLC, and now there's this chain of title that can really be really hard to untangle. And that's another, I think, warning sign, not to trust these kind of informal relationships and to see if a family member or someone you know is getting involved in something like that because they are facing financial problems.
Listener writes, I am a real estate attorney with a lot of experience in this area. I have litigated these cases in civil court. These are murky cases. Criminal liability is tough to prove. However, if you can strengthen the civil laws, you will take away the financial incentives, which is what this is all about. That's an interesting comment. And I think Dora in East Harlem is going to mention something else she thinks lawyers might be able to do to help prevent deed theft. Hi, Dora. You're on WNYC. Thank you for calling.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call, Brian. I have some experience with this from another part of the country, both in Texas and in Chicago. But here's really, I want to go back to this question about wills. One thing that was so fundamental in the community where I lived of black and brown folks was many of the properties were being lost because first there weren't wills, and so then you got all of this drama with heirs property, and that opened the door for developers and others to go in and get the property. So a really simple thing that was done in one community where I lived was organizing an army of pro bono lawyers to make sure that older folks or folks who had inherited property without going through the probate system actually made sure that they got wills. It cleaned up some of the disputes that later came up and just resulted in families losing property that they'd had for generations. So that's a small piece, but it's a really foundational starting piece to help people be able to keep their property. You've got to get a will.
David, anything on that?
I think that's exactly right, and I think that those types of estate planning services or encouraging people to make wills. And maybe that is something that this new deed theft prevention office could focus on, free estate planning, or really finding properties where that are potentially vulnerable to this, and property owners who don't have wills, and offering to do that at discount or for free to avoid exactly what she was talking about, those types of disputes later on.
Dora, thanks so much for bringing that up. That's really useful. Hopefully some people will hear that and will take some steps in that direction regarding wills early enough to prevent potential deed theft. Our housing reporter, David Brand, will, of course, continue to cover it. David, thanks for joining us as always.
Always a lot to talk about. Thank you, Brian.
When you don't vote, you can't sit on a jury. You have no right to complain about the police because you won't even go and vote so you can even sit on a jury. As I've said to the cows when I first started to call in, I spent 11 years on a job where I worked for a bank and had to sit in court day after day, after day after day. And I watched them select juries. I watched black people going to jail, black people having white probation officers, and the whole judicial system just truncated with white supremacy. And a great deal of it some of it could be lessened if black people simply voted.
A Supreme Court ruling could alter election maps across this country.
On Wednesday, the court's conservative Republican supermajority made it much harder to apply the Voting Rights Act. Voting rights advocates have long considered the law the crown jewel of the civil rights movement.
NPR's Hansi Lo Wang covers voting rights and is with us. Hansi, good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Okay, so this is a ruling concerning a specific congressional district, just one in Louisiana. But what is the most important thing to think about as this is applied elsewhere?
This ruling reinterprets long-standing protections against racial discrimination and redistricting, and it's going to make it much, much harder to challenge voting maps, not just for Congress, but at all levels of government, with claims that the maps unfairly weaken the collective voting power of racial minorities in places where white majority voters and minority voters of color tend to prefer different candidates.
So the idea of the Voting Rights Act in the 1960s was if black voters had their voting power diluted by gerrymandering, you could draw new black majority districts to correct that. That was the operation before. What's the rule after the Supreme Court opinion?
Well, the conservative Justice Samuel Alito wrote the majority opinion for the court, and Alito said the focus of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which is the section at the heart of this Louisiana case, Alito said the focus of it should be intentional racial discrimination.
Intentional racial discrimination. That's the change?
Yes. Congress amended the Voting Rights Act decades ago to say that Section 2 should focus on any discriminatory effects of a redistricting plan. And, one legal expert I talked to yesterday was Atiba Ellis at Case Western Reserve University. And Ellis said that proving intentional discrimination, this new standard, is notoriously difficult.
We, in essence, are asking plaintiffs now to find a smoking gun, the proof of the racist intent that is sort of objectively and consciously articulated in order to prove their case. The problem with discrimination cases is that most legislators in this context know better than to say that.
So in practice, Atiba Ellis and other legal experts say these Section 2 protections may now end up being basically impossible to enforce.
So you could have a discriminatory effect, but still struggle to prove that it was a discriminatory intent. Is there an immediate effect ahead of the midterm elections we have this year?
Well, Republican-controlled states, especially in the South, could try to eliminate some Democratic-represented House districts that the Voting Rights Act was likely protecting. But it is late April, and we are past most state candidate filing deadlines for this year's midterm election. Now, that hasn't stopped Republicans in places like Louisiana, Georgia, and Tennessee from urging their states' maps to be redrawn as soon as possible. I should note there's a request in for the Supreme Court to speed up certifying its rulings so that Louisiana can try to redistrict. But again, the timing makes this tricky to do this year. This could be a multi-year redraw in the end. And whenever this redistricting happens, part of the bottom line here is that with the further weakened Voting Rights Act, the United States may be headed towards seeing the largest ever decline in representation by black members of Congress.
This ruling comes just as Florida is the latest state to redraw its or try to redraw its maps.
That's right. And this is a map that the governor's office in Florida has cited the ruling to make a case for it. It was unveiled early this week, and we'll see how it plays out.
Hansi, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
That's NPR's Hansi Lo Wang.
TV. Am I watching it or is it watching me? Man, I don't really know. But I feel like I'm being scoped, y'all. Watch, y'all. Something ain't right.
Our next guest says the suspect in the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner would not have been flagged by far-reaching government spy powers that expire this week. Congress is divided over whether to extend part of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act that relates to whether U.S. government spy agencies need warrants to conduct surveillance of foreigners overseas. University of Michigan professor Javed Ali is a former government intelligence analyst who served at the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI. He was also a member of the National Security Council under President Trump. Javed, welcome back.
Indira, thank you for having me.
So the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, better known as FISA, was first passed in 1978 to prevent the government from abusing its spy powers against Americans. There's one part of it called Section 702 that expires on Thursday. What does that section do and why is it controversial?
So Section 702 is basically a warrantless surveillance program that does not require a warrant from the only secret court we have in the United States called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or the FISC. It's generated a lot of controversy because of the fact you don't have to go to a court to get the surveillance approved in the first place.
Well, you have said that the suspect in the Saturday night shooting outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner would not have been flagged by routine U.S. intelligence surveillance with or without Section 702. Why is that significant?
None of these surveillance authorities that are directed externally would have ever flagged someone like a Cole Allen unless they were talking to someone already under surveillance or in the intelligence holdings. And I don't think we know the answer to that yet, but my suspicion is that he probably wasn't. And that seems to be the case with most of these lone offender attacks we've seen inside the United States over the past few years. These are people who have no foreign connections whatsoever.
All right. Well, right now, under Section 702, intelligence agents don't need to seek a judicial warrant to surveil a suspect outside of the United States. But what happens when an American person is communicating with a foreigner who is being surveilled by U.S. intelligence?
Then it's incumbent on the intelligence community to go back and look at who that U.S. person is and see if there is also a legitimate basis of national security concern for them, and do they need to go to the FISA court now to get a FISA warrant on that person, or is that collection about an American here just completely incidental?
Right. Okay. Well, let's talk about where abuse comes in. There have been documented cases, abuses, in which an American's personal data and private correspondence has been swept up in the investigation of a foreigner. Briefly, just tell us what are some of the cases of abuses that you may have concerns about.
Well, the most notable case of abuse that politicians on both sides of the aisle point to is the one against former Trump advisor Carter Page going back to 2015 and 2016. He was under investigation because of these suspected links to the Russian government. And the FBI Inspector General issued a report in 2019 and said that Carter Page investigation was flawed on its original premise. There have been other examples found by the FBI Inspector General, and over the past few years, that's where the FBI has really had to kind of rein in the use of 702 internally. Could there be another moment where that happens? Potentially, but the FBI has at least what they have described, has tried to put in sort of more institutional mechanisms to make sure that the probability of that is far lower than it was even going back a few years
All right.
ago.
Well, to keep this simple for listeners, the critics of letting Section 702 expire say that if you force investigators to get a warrant from a judge, it slows down investigations. President Trump wants no reforms, no changes, and he wants at this point an 18-month extension of Section 702. At this point, lawmakers are debating some possible modifications to the law that expires on Thursday. Those might include requiring more people inside the Directorate of National Intelligence and attorneys at the FBI to review the surveillance requests, or getting a larger group of lawmakers to see the surveillance requests. Would that be enough to make sure that Americans are protected from being spied on by our government?
Well, these are some of the potential steps that could be put in place to curb against the unnecessary or perhaps unconstitutional surveillance that could happen. But again, this is going to be part of the showdown between the executive branch and Congress. 702 can still move forward for another year. That's kind of another interesting aspect of this. It's not like the program will just stop on April 30th.
Former U.S. intelligence analyst and former National Security Council member Javed Ali now teaches at the University of Michigan's Ford School of Public Policy. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Indira.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, May 2, 2026. So I have been told our weekly counter-racist weekly review. There we go. Hopefully worthy of your time and energy. If folks have victims of white supremacy have a thought to share, observations, counter-racist research, thoughts on any of the reports that we heard, or counter-racist suggestions, the number 720-716-7300, the code 564943, pound, press star 61 if you would like to participate. Number again, 720-716-7300, the code 564943, pound, press star 61 if you would like to participate. Few things before we see if folks have commentary to share. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Hit the blog racism-notes.blogspot.com, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, also the link for the Amazon wish list, the Cash App link, cash.app/$the C.O.W.S. Much obliged for all the folks who've invested, kept us on the air for 17 years, even when we do not have Wi-Fi at the residence. Suspiciously, still broadcasting. Hopefully worthy of your time and energy. The wish list is under Gus T. Renegade. It is linked at the blog. Enormous gratitude for all of the investors who've nabbed an item or 12 over all of these years. Hopefully worthy of your investment. Now, things to share before we check in with others. Some of the tidbits that we heard in the audio to start. We heard that report where they talked about the impact of so-called climate change on produce, fruits, strawberries, not having the same sweetness and being smaller in size. They had a whole gambit of different produce and how they were being impacted. The lychees I don't know if you've had those. I didn't get those until I came out to the California, I think was the first place. They have them here in the Seattle area as well. Very sweet. Well, I guess, I don't know. They said they're maybe not as sweet. They drop before they are fully mature and ripe. So I guess if you can get them correctly, they're supposed to be sweet and, kind of juicy, delicious, all that. But when they talked about the impact of the weather on the produce, it reminded me right here in Seattle, 2021, we had 3 consecutive days of triple-digit heat. I remember we broadcasted on at least one of those days. It was a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, June of 2021. Important, those 3 consecutive triple-digit heat days. According to white people's recorded history of Seattle, this area has only had 6 triple-digit heat days on record. 3 of those 6, again, were consecutive days in 2021. We thought we were going to die. But specifically, and I think they said at that time about 60% of the houses, no air conditioning because it is so rare for us to have heat like that here. So thought we were going to die. And I think they said, in fact, that is the most deadly weather event that we've had in the history of this part of the world. I think it might even be the entire state of Washington that is the most deadly weather event. We have earthquakes here. We have 5 volcanoes here. Like, let that sink. That is the most dangerous event. Landslides, like all kinds of things. It snows here, all kinds of things. That was the most dangerous, most deadly weather event. They specifically talked about the impact on produce from that time, and they said you could see like the blueberries and raspberries and other produce from the area. It had a massive impact. All that heat from that, basically that weekend. I'm not even sure it was like summer proper at that time, because that was right like kind of towards the latter part of June. So it may not have been like official summer when that happened. But they had those same types of reports and saying if you're going to have milder winters and shorter winters and longer summer, it's going to be hotter and more irregular rain and all of that, produce might not be as tasty and might not be as nutritious. I was thinking on the sly, that might be the planet's way of getting rid of us. Like I've had it. The cesspoolians poison and destroy everything and put plastic in everything. I've had it. We're going to get them out of here. One way or another, we're going to get them out of here. I was thinking that. Now you have apples and all that and cabbage and spinach and everything with 50% less nutrients. That's what I would think. Like, it can't just be it looks funny or it's smaller. Might not have the same nutrient content as before we had all this excessive heat and such. Might be trying to get rid of us. The planet, the creator, that is. The segment about colorectal cancer, I thought that was so important. I played D'Angelo to preface that segment. I guess I could have picked something from Marvel's Black Panther or the great Chadwick Boseman's career. I do want to point out D'Angelo, unless I'm misinformed, he passed away from pancreatic cancer. That is not colorectal cancer, but all of those are gastrointestinal cancers. Same family, unfortunately. And D'Angelo barely missed the threshold in terms of age. They said it's rising cause of deaths for people under the age of 50. And they talked about black people specifically. D'Angelo was 51. And I'm surprised that they did not talk about, because all of that, again, we get back to diet, especially in there. We're going to be talking about, I didn't go to the bathroom, and I'm not regular. I can't say that we talked about that a bunch, but we have talked about that on the cows repeatedly. Dr. Niana Rasayan, he said, answer nature's call. Don't be sitting there holding it, twisting it back. Go to the lavatory. And then he said you should be using the restroom on a regular basis. It shouldn't be, oh man, I don't think I hadn't used no toilet paper or poop since, what's today, Saturday? Monday? That should not be happening. You really should be taking a poop every time you eat something. I think that was what he told us. This came up again. We talked to Dr. Ruby Lathan, where she talked about it should not be, you got to sit on the toilet and struggle and fight, sweating. That should not be the case. Drinking more water and eating more fruits, veggies that we talked about, that are getting more fiber in your diet should make it much easier, and you'll be going more regularly. She talked specifically, once she switched up a healthier diet, more fruits, veggies, she didn't have all that straining. You go on a regular basis and it's quick, bang. Not all that effort and difficulty and force and everything. Get more fiber. That's she, I, and others who are very informed. She is a nutritionist by trade, certified. Gus T is not, but I certainly agree with what she said. She's more informed. And Dr. Niana Rasayan, others that we've had on, getting fiber in your diet. They do all this, get your protein bars and protein this and protein that. I asked Dr. Lathan, I said, have you seen someone who is protein deficient? They just don't get enough protein in their diet. Like, who is that? I said, I know all kinds of folks. They don't get enough fiber in their diet. That right there is related. Man, I just can't go to the bathroom. Man, I don't know what I got to get Metamucil and all that old craziness. Why don't you eat more produce daily? That would do wonders. Get more fiber. Even, I don't do all those fruit juices and such. I do love some pomegranate juice. No sugar added, but beyond that, I don't do all that. Why? I love smoothies. You get the whole fruit, skin included. Generally, if I make like mashed potatoes or something, I leave the skin on. Even if I'm going to do dessert, if I make apple pie, I leave the skin on the apples. I do apples in a smoothie, something like that. Leave the skin on. Get more fiber. That's what not all that protein. Fiber. That would do wonders, helping our gastrointestinal health. D'Angelo, Chadwick Boseman. Let's see, that segment from First Post where they talked about people talking less. Whew. It did set my brain computer a-thinking. Now, I will say, on the one, the great Neely Fuller, I remember he talked to us, COVID-19 happened, and he said, man, they say all that social distancing and stay in the house, that is wonderful. All that running off at the mouth that we do and talking about things, we being victims of white supremacy and things that have no constructive value, name-calling, nonsense, hey, whew, spectacular. We have to stay in the house and be quiet for a little while. That is great. Maybe we'll come out and have a whole new constructive perspective on life. That's on the one, I was thinking that. Maybe we do need to do a lot less talking because we don't have nothing constructive to say anyway. Too many of us. On the other, I was thinking, man, I do see that where frequently, even amongst attempted counter-racists, frequently it will be exactly what they said. Cool. Great. Wow. LOL. Like, Man, I mean, if this is counter-racism science, at minimum it should be more than a word, a sentence, maybe. I see that frequently. A lot of that, the text messages, the emojis and pictures, that just is the way a lot, even unfortunately, a lot of that has leaked to how people communicate in the workplace. LOLs, the one-word responses, cool, seen that, can't even write a full sentence. I would say that's something for attempted counter-racist scientists. If we're talking about something serious, especially writing, it should warrant something more than wow, cool, emoji, one sentence. I think even if we're on the phone, I know a lot of folks are on the phone, so we want to do a whole lot. I will say we do a whole lot of thumb typing and all that about nonsense. What did she say? She called me what? Was she wearing it? And what was on television? And what's the score of the game? Who gonna win? All the rest of it. Something serious. So, on the one, if it's just going to be a lot of nonsense, if we're not about the assignment, go ahead and hit the mute button. Nothing need be said. But if we're going to be working, it should be more than one word. Like, hey, let's work on having full sentences. Use our vocabulary, not emojis and acronyms, abbreviations and such. Let's see. The segment about the temporary protected status for the Haitians and other non-white people, I do think it is significant, important that you have even white people and powerful white people saying that this is racist. Frequently, I do not hear my BFF Amy Goodman identify news reports, things that they talk about. This is an illustration of racism. Most of the time, that is not the case. So that does stand out to me in many ways, even though I do agree that, in my view, that is racist. If you're just going out here, you're not looking for undocumented white people from the Ukraine, Canada, white people from France or the UK who overstayed their visa. You're not looking for them. And you know it's got to be those folks, too. You're just looking for dark people from anywhere. Even dark people that's born here, like, you sure, Leroy? Totally. What else to call that but whites, and particularly saying got all these no-count Haitians from these S-hole countries. Whoa. What to call that but white supremacy racism? But it does stand out as suspicious to me that you can galvanize all of this support from white people who look like they would be racist to me, at least race soldier suspects, but they're ready to jump up and down and protest and go. Dr. O'Reilly said we went out to a bunch of, me and my wife, we go to all the protests about the ICE folk. Now it could be, hey, we got some Haitian immigrants, they come over here and bed nurse and take care of our bedpan, because, Dr. O'Reilly, he kind of old, Might need them folks come over here and, give me an old sponge bath. These dark people from other parts of the world, they love elderly folks. See, they respect elders. See, it's like a library, they say. See, when they said that in the report, I was thinking, so are they saying white culture, they don't respect elders? You can't pay white people correctly and have them come over and empty your bedpan, make sure all your medications are organized, give you a bib so you can eat without spilling mashed potatoes and gravy all over yourself. You can't get white people to come and hook you up and do it. You got to go and get the heathen monkey people from the S-hole countries that you all said you didn't want here anyway. You got to go and get from the dregs, the wretched of the earth to take care of you. I don't even know what to say about that. That's almost the same thing you got to get mammy to take care of the children. Like, man, what seemed like an indictment of white culture, don't it? But anyway, I do think it is significant that Amy Goodman and many white people who normally would not say this is racist, much less I'm going to go out and protest and be active against something that is racist. But these immigrants, I might go say a word for the Haitians. Like, at least for myself, I find that very suspicious. I don't have no beef with the Haitians. I'm not out here calling ICE on them, even if we're not cool, because I'm not really cool with anybody. But no, that is an act of racism, period. I just think it's suspicious amongst people classified as white. But moving forward, when they talked, it sounded so plantational in the segment, not Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman, the segment where they said that the elderly, geriatric white people, Donald Sterling types, right? Amy Goodman, she's not a teeny bopper. They said, we're going to go and advocate. We're going to go and stand out here in front of Congress, and you leave the Haitians alone. We need Toussaint to stay. My bedpan full. You leave them alone. We need them to stay here and help out. We got an aging population. You remind me, I talk about that workplace racism all the time. They call it the silver tsunami, meaning you have an aging white population. What are we going to do? Again, it seemed like, man, do white people, they don't value old people? They don't even value old white people? I don't know what to say about all that. Like, man, it seemed like a knock against white culture, especially if they don't care about children. Anywho, but they said, yeah, we lost our cook and half of our staff. Dang, you can't get nobody to work at the elderly facility, but the non-white people who don't even live here, pretend black people. Man, the segment where they said they were talking about the disproportionate population of black people in Wisconsin prisons. I am not surprised at all from what I saw while I was there, and locked up for any number of reasons. And then they have so many sundown towns in Wisconsin. I could easily see you as a black person, they are being locked up just for traveling too far outside of Milwaukee. Racine. What you doing in Sheboygan? You don't have no Leroy. They come on, let's go. But like, I could easily see that sort of thing in Wisconsin. Too, when I heard that, I immediately remembered, what was I doing this time last year? Preparing for Milwaukee. Yeah. That's another reason. Yeah. Have me in greater confinement in Wisconsin. Old Max Anderson got convicted. Whole time, you can go back and listen to my coverage of the trial. Put him in general population. That's what they were saying on the courthouse steps moments after he was convicted. General population. No special privileges, and general population. And whole lot of brothers and sisters in general population might remember, oh, you the one who chopped up the little 19-year-old. Oh, we remember you. Come on, we got a spot waiting for you. Come on in. Max. That's what I was remembering, like, oh, yeah. And they did not put Max in general population. In fact, I have to go back to verify. His location is not even disclosed, but I think they moved him out of the state of Wisconsin. I have to go back to verify, but I think they did like a prisoner swap thing. Oh, no, we know we done locked up all kinds of Negroes in Wisconsin. And they, oh, no, we're going to take care of Max. We're going to move him someplace. They ain't even heard. They don't even know nothing about no Max Anderson. We'll send him to Idaho or someplace. And they say, Max Anderson? I don't know no Max Anderson. Okay, great. You'll fit right. Like, man. But that immediately came to mind, and then they went through all their tacky justifications and what we going to do about this, and saying that we got elder, aging prison population, so maybe we'll be able to make some change and get some of these folks out and all the rest of it. Reminded me of Jim Crow, too. Like, dang, Michelle Alexander, who was born in Illinois, I believe that is a contiguous state to Wisconsin. Dang, so we are 16, almost 2 decades out from New Jim Crow, and we ain't made no progress. Y'all still got prisons bursting in Wisconsin? Probably with, and there ain't no probably, ain't no probably, bursting disproportionately with Leroy. Lock up more black people than almost anywhere in the universe. We ain't made no progress at all. They probably reading New Jim Crow in prison in La Crosse, Sheboygan, Milwaukee, Deer Park, Cedarboro. Let's see. Didn't get Kyle Rittenhouse. Didn't get in contiguous because old Kyle Rittenhouse, he didn't even live in Wisconsin. Didn't he live next door in Illinois? He had to come down to restore law and order. We weren't going to put him in general population either, talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. The segment, general population for old Rashad Muhammad. Rashad Muhammad in Fulton County Jail in Georgia, where they lock up tons of black people. They have been bursting the prisons in Georgia since like forever. That's the territory of Douglas Blackman, where they had the convict leasing system. But they said privileged black male Rashad Muhammad, where he was locked up for allegedly shooting someone, but they dropped the charges. That's kind of suspicious. Like, if he was violent, dangerous fellow, why are we dropping the charges? But they lock him up, and they, said he already had a medical condition, and they totally ignore and have him in prison, and he goes to this whole, I can't even imagine, catastrophic episode. Ends up having to have, they said, 2 legs amputated and several, not like one, several fingers amputated. What? I guess that's punishment enough. You drop the charges. And I believe his representation, Ben Crump, was a part of it. Again, I don't know if that's reason to fuss at Ben Crump, be mad at him, but I think that was Benjamin Crump, another privileged black male. But I mean, that's one where I even remember the great Neely Fuller Jr., he would talk about Shawshank Redemption, Morgan Freeman, and he would say that was prison like forever. You could go to prison and die, and it wouldn't even be no shocker. What? He went? Oh, well, you could just expect that to happen. That's one of the reasons he was talking about Shawshank Redemption all the time, because it was just so easy. You saw so many people die there, like, that's nothing. That's nothing, like, particularly if you classified as black, like you done messed up and raped somebody or stole something or mugged something or raped somebody or whatever you did, or raped somebody or whatever you did. Good riddance. Good riddance. Rashad Muhammad, good riddance. Plus, there's a whole lot of black dudes in Atlanta, so we replace you easy. That ain't even nothing lost, for reals. Good riddance. We got a little bit more room now. Thankfully, he didn't pass in that one, but I mean, you got to get appendages amputated like Jesus Christ. He easily could have died. Even reminded me of our new champion of the worst book of all time, Dorothy Roberts, when she was a guest on the program in 2009. She said the one category where black people are the champions, undisputed, amputations. Oh yeah, you go to the hospital, end up missing a foot, end up missing fingers, end up missing a toe. Black man, black woman, champions of amputation. She put it in her book. Follow up. Context of White Supremacy. I remember that when I heard about Mr. Muhammad's case as well, Rashad Muhammad. The segment audio report where they talked about people in New York City being arrested for sleeping or spreading out on the subway. Now, that was an audio report. So I don't know the person who was arrested, if that was a non-white person or a white person. But I have an idea of who is going to be snatched up, dragged off of the subway, out into the cold. Who is that going to happen to? I suspect they got that on there too, in terms of over the decades, Who gets the citations for sleeping on the subway? Who gets the citations spreading out on the, which is say, taking up more than one seat on the subway? Who gets the citations for that, I wonder? NYC indeed. They said oh man, we've been talking about Mayor Mamdani's campaign, new mayor of New York City, for some time. And we talked about, I think we had some listeners in NYC who said they went to hear him speak just right when he started out. And they said, oh man, do you have any literature or something where I can kind of look at some of your goals, projects you're going to be working on? And say, oh, we ain't got the literature quite ready yet, Black Brother. We got you. Check the website. We're going to be getting it all together, blah, blah, blah. All the rest of it, he said he was a little bit bummed, right? Me too, right? Because I wanted to hear. And so we talked to different people like, man, what is he going to do? Address racism? Has he said anything specifically? Boom. This is one. Lots to be done, but this is one. Got the commission to address deed theft. Now, this is something that they've talked about New York Public Radio repeatedly. This is even one where they have a report I highlighted because they didn't say black people are intelligent, smart, darn near geniuses, all of us. They didn't say that. They said black people are not well informed, unintelligent, kind of ignorant, lamp noodles, and it's real easy to come, hey, Leroy, you don't even own your house. You got 15 hours to vacate or we're going to make trouble for you. Here's a piece of paper. You can sign right here. We'll give you $15. You be out of there in 15 hours. They're like, what? Okay. And they just go ahead and that's what they said New York Public Radio. We played it before. And they said that there. That's one that would have to be addressed in part of all of this deed theft. Black people getting more information. I thought that was a great recommendation from the caller who said some of this could be nipped in the bud. Wills. Write a will. Now we don't have all this contested property and ambiguous ownership. Get that will done. She said even we took a weekend and just did some pro bono work. We as the lawyers in this instance. We just went out and did some pro bono work. People that own a house, you don't have a will, boom, let's get that knocked out. Boom, boom, boom. She said just that alone. We didn't have to cut no checks or nothing. We didn't even have to go chase down no white people and put them in prison. Just go in and do some free will work for Negro homeowners. Immediate impact. We actually talked about that before. Not getting attorneys to go out and do it for free, but at minimum, get that will written. I think we had said before, if you are a victim of white supremacy, if you are over the age of 30, if you are married, if you have children and or you own a house, you should have a will. Like immediately. You should not to be morbid, anything like that. When a system of white supremacy, non-white people die in unjust manners all the time. George Floyd, Sandra Bland, all the time. So, and just to minimize ambiguity, minimize opportunities for racism, white supremacy, write a will. You can change it, update it, whatever you need, but write a will. Very important, and apparently that would go a long way to stop some of this so-called deed theft. I think they also said even just making an adjustment changes so that only people who are the heir can actually do the selling. That seems like it probably go a long way, as opposed to having somebody who lives, we'll say, in California, who just found, well, let me buy your percentage of the house. Bam. Now I'm going to put it up for sale. What? You don't even know any of these people. That's all right. Take advantage just fine. White people have been doing this for like decades. We talked about this sort of thing with N.D.B. Connolly. He wrote the book A World More Concrete, and he said white people have just refined how they steal loot property from black people, as opposed to we come and burn the whole thing down or lynch you all, chase you out at the threat of a gun at midnight. Now we can just come and, buy a fraction of it, or property taxes. We got lots of ways. The segment on the Voting Rights Act that got lots of commentary this week. I saw that pretty much every major outlet and even some of the smaller news outlets. The metaphors. Wow, the segment that we heard, they said that the so-called Voting Rights Act is the crown of the civil rights movement. Now, we just heard from Michelle Alexander yesterday that the peak of the civil rights movement, so-called, was the Civil Rights Act. Now we got the Voting Rights Act as the so-called crown jewel, whatever that means. Maybe they let you vote, maybe they don't. Then they said that them weakening the Voting Rights Act, that this is going to reduce black leadership for generations. That was a written report that I shared. All of the leaders of black people are white. I'm not saying don't vote, but I mean, really. Black people have been doing all that. We went through obesity. Black people have done a lot of voting. Sometimes they count the ballots, sometimes they don't. It has not replaced white supremacy with justice. This is important, but let's not exaggerate the importance of voting to replacing white supremacy with justice, even for the quality of life where people classified as black, not white. At any rate, but they will talk lots about the voting changes and what have you. I do think that is important because all of this, I think, is a response to white genetic annihilation. White people, either based in fact or even if it's just based in these are our anxieties that may not be true, but these are anxieties, concerns, fears we have anyway about the population of non-white people impacting our numeric domination as white people in this part of the world. I think this is a part of that response, actually all of it, the aging white population. So we need some of these Haitians to stay. The abortion, and we got to play that report last week in Wyoming. You ain't aborting no white babies here. We need everyone we can. All of that response to white genetic annihilation. But I'm not over here crying, pouting because white people gonna make it more difficult to prove racism with regards to voting. You gotta find where somebody called you a nigger and said we're not gonna let no niggers vote before they say, oh yeah, that's racism with regards to elections. Same type of thing they're doing in many other areas of people activity. Last thing I'll get in, or maybe two, but one of two. The report about the FISA expiration this past Thursday and President Trump squabbling to keep it for 18 additional months and all of that. I thought it was so important because they talked about within that, what about sometimes you accidentally end up snooping on U.S. citizens without justification because you're listening in on somebody who is not a U.S. citizen and they're talking to a U.S. citizen, so you end up getting their personal data. I immediately thought Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. I said, in talking about her FBI files and going through these records over the past week or so, 10 days or so, I have said, if you travel outside the U.S., that can be enough to trigger you getting a intelligence file, FBI, CIA, State Department, maybe all three, or other government agencies. That can be enough, just you traveling outside the U.S. Or you make international phone calls. That can be enough to trigger, who are you talking to? What you talking about? Is this it? Because, hey, that's a big deal now, particularly before communications improved so much, but particularly 20th century and that type of whoa, who are you talking to? All this money, and how did you figure out the country code and all the rest of it, That came to mind immediately, where they would have all sorts of reasons to be snooping. What are you talking about? Who are you talking to? And every justification that you can think of. We don't know. Look at that. Guy just tried to take a shot at the president. It's happening all the time. And we just had, Timothy McVeigh anniversary in Oklahoma City. I mean, hey, we got serious security concerns. They'll have every sort of justification, but it's not going to be so that you can make sure Tim McVeigh, make sure Eric Rudolph, make sure Peyton Gendron, make sure they're not going to blow up or shoot up the church or the grocery. That's not what it is. What you up there trying to be. Maybe some of them will get on their assignment. Like I said, now you got to be peeping and paying attention to Dr. Welsing at 19. You're not going to be peeping from McVeigh. You looking which one of them is on their assignment. Which one of them, they trying to do something constructive. They trying to figure out how to replace white supremacy with justice. Let's listen in. Let's pay attention. You're not paying attention to who's sharing copies of Anarchist Cookbook. You don't care about that. You don't care about these white people who say they sorry. I'm not fixing to pay no taxes. You don't care about all that. What 19-year-old Frances Cresswell, because she's not even a doctor. What Frances Cresswell, listen. Shh. What Fuller doing? Because they said they got files on Fuller. What Fuller doing? He not even a doctor. Said he retarded from Oklahoma. What Fuller doing? What are you doing? Counter-racist, compensatory. You gonna write the book? See, okay, we write that down. That's what you peeping on. That's why you got to be listening. That's what all this is for. Dr. O'Reilly said, black, you treated like garbage. Just had him back on the program a couple days ago. Talked about JFK and the Dr. Welsing files that even he didn't have. Anyway, last thing that I'll get in. I didn't play this because I was tons of audio this week, so what they say, cup runneth over. It was one extra I was going to play. Not the most important thing, so I don't have no, feelings about not playing it, but I mean, I'll at least say a word about it. Negro culture. You keep this in mind as we get ready for the BBQ season and Cinco de Mayo if you celebrate Memorial Day and the pools open up and hot weather, all that good stuff. Black brother Deshaun Jackson played the tackle football, probably got the brain damage. He is coaching college football currently. And he has a team with a lot of privileged black males on it. Deshaun Jackson, privileged black male himself, said he wanted to team his words. He wanted to train these young fellas to put the dog in them. Oh, sure. Thank you. He was going to put the dog in them, as he said it. And so these young people, they play the tackle football. And one of the young folks on the team, he has a lawsuit filed. What's the lawsuit about? Gus T. You'll see this if you check WHYY, Philly Public Radio. The lawsuit is about, apparently, the football players, college students, this is college football, the young players on the college football team, they did some sort of wrestling, which is kind of what they call it, horseplay, right? Tomfoolery. So they were doing some wrestling around. And so one of the guys, he grabbed one of the other black male players and put him in the chokehold. And so the young player that's being choked, he's trying to tap out, as they say. I'm going to submit. Uncle, you the man. Let me go. Let me breathe. Can I breathe? What I just said that this week seemed like it's always with black people. It's always we got some trouble breathing. So the young players, he was going to put the George Floyd treatment on him. So he choking him. And so the young fella, when he tries to submit, fella doesn't release him, ends up going unconscious. The fella that's choking him, as opposed to gently placing him down, you're all right, black brother. What I just said, black people are like trash. He literally throws him down like trash, face first. Unconscious black male lands on his face, breaks his jaw, causes all of this dental damage. They got these crazy pictures with his whole face bandaged up and everything. I was so repulsed. It reminded me of that so-called hazing incident in Louisiana. That was also privileged black male college students, and one of them, he punched another black male student so hard that it killed him. I think that's still being adjudicated because this is somewhat recent. But that's what it reminded me of, like black culture. And that's even one for the football for sure. And because that's so common. Like, oh, yeah, that's what we joined the team for. Hit somebody so we can be violent. To hit a black person. Gang up on a black. All of that is so common. We got to do some hazing. Got to do some wrestling. This wasn't even like they had a wrestling match and we just went mano a mano. I think he just came up and grabbed him and started choking him. Like the young fella said, I tried to submit. He choked me until I'm unconscious. I might even dare I say, that is black culture. I'm going to have some fun. We got to go and let me try and choke you. Oh, I say that's black culture because, hey, before I get to choke you to death, what do? You old no-count, dirty shoes, dirty foot, rusty hair, rusty, dirty elbowed. See, got to do the name calling, got to do the dozens. We don't even have no argument. We brag about that being black culture. So after I done called you 15 names, I got to choke you out. After I choke you out, I got to throw you on your face. Black culture. Black culture. I was ready to throw up when I saw that. That's like 2 days ago, this week. Philadelphia News, Pennsylvania News. Deshaun Jackson played for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's what I learned. Professional football. Be a dog. You choke out. You don't choke out your opponent. You choke out your teammates. And dump them on their face, unconscious. That's why I said you can rewind from that report that I did not play, but you can rewind from that to that report I did play about the, dang, people don't even talk no more. We done it. Hey, good. Shh. Keep your hands to yourself, too. Worthy of great pity. That young fella that he choked out and dumped on his face also could have died. He could have been someone, man, we need him to replace white supremacy with justice. Now he got to go and have all these oral surgeries and get his teeth fixed and get his jaw fixed. Come on, man. Again, I humbly submit. Black culture. Black culture. Can't even take team photo correctly. Let's see if folks have commentary to share. Let's see. We'll check in. Lost the switchboard. Okay, there we go. All righty. Let's see if folks have a word, thought to share. Let's see. Retired firefighter should be with us.
Greetings. Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I have two reports. The first one would be about the results of the meeting with the mayor. I didn't discuss that, did I?
The meeting about the employment, why they didn't have only hired one black person for the fire department, that meeting, or?
Yeah, well, I was just asking. I didn't discuss on what actually happened in the meeting. Is that correct?
I don't believe we got the full details. I know it was supposed to be coming. I think they only hired the one black person.
All right, I'm gonna run through it on how the meeting went. Because that was my first time ever going to a meeting of that nature, let alone with the mayor of Miami-Dade County. Which is different from the city of Miami. If someone would be confused about it, it's two different things. But anyway, downtown Miami. It was literally a round table. The essential people was the mayor of Miami-Dade, the mayor of Miami-Dade. Her last name was Carver, white lady. The fire chief was there. It was strange because he is from he's a Palestinian, I think, and I'll speak on that a little bit later. And what he did, and this is old practice, he brought all of his black chiefs to the meeting. Other than him, because he surely looked like a white person. But everybody else was a black male that he brought, which is an old strategy, for one thing. And you had the NAACP was there. It was some other organizations with some black females, that sort of thing. But everybody else other than the mayor and the fire chief were clearly non-white. So anyway, the first thing took place was a introduction, in this round table. It was about maybe 15 to 20 people sitting at this round table. And the first thing, introduction, and then the purpose for being there, quickly, because we figured out the strategy. Also, I like to state, and this has something to do with you, 2 of the people that was in the meeting actually were guests on your program, Mr. Clark and the former and only black fire chief of Dade County Fire Department. He was in there with us also. And so we figured that out very quickly, what the strategy was of the fire chief. They were going to stick with the math, the numbers, that sort of thing, and stating that it was all just based on the numbers. And there was a sheet that we had, and as far as some of the demographics, the first demographic was Hispanic. And as you know, Hispanic is not a racial classification, but it was not only on the sheet, but it was the first thing. Because most people read from left to right, and that was the first thing that was there. Other than that, black, white, something called other, and female. So basically, it was like kind of like your program. If you don't interrupt the other person, but when it's clear, somebody else can either raise their hand or if there's a lull in it, that the person would enter into their understanding. So Mr. Clark immediately noticed what was going on because like I said, the fire chief had all of these assistants, black assistants, I call them soul trained. They were giving out numbers. We're not here for no numbers. And he started talking about racism, white supremacy, in the fashion of the history of Miami-Dade Fire Department before we were employees, during the time we were employees, and apparently it's going on now. So we kept the discussion on that basis, instead of them going with all these numbers and whatnot. And basically, it went for about maybe 2 hours, and it was broken up by the mayor, quote unquote, having to go somewhere. And basically she stated, and which is not surprising, that this is something that we're going to have to look into and go over and improve upon our hiring practices, that sort of thing. And they, the only thing that took place, some of the young black people that all of a sudden came up, and so they could put on the list. There was a lot of other things that is problematic and makes it very tough for black young people, male and female, to get hired. They actually have it's almost like the Boy and Girl Scouts, these groups that they have, but they're nowhere near where black people stay at. And a 16-year-old teenager or middle schooler is not going to be able to get to these places, and they basically get these people through different types of trainings, that sort of thing, and to whereas they can be almost qualified before they even go to the recruit class. And these are some of the things that we were talking about also. And but anyway, everybody was saying that the meeting went pretty good. It wasn't like we was expecting there was going to be some kind of big change or something like that. But we was able to bring attention to what we thought was essential, was important, and moved on from there. It still is going to be more to report on in the future, as far as that concerned. I think I went as far as I can go on that. Okay. DCS program. I kept doing a lot of thinking over actually weeks, about the program itself and how to improve the program. And I've always been with you with the idea of having books, but it's kind of like was pretty difficult in order to get books. But we actually get money that we pay ourselves. But I was not taking none of the money at all. I would just tell Mr. Clark, with the money that goes to me, just put it back into the program in itself. So what I thought of the idea is with that particular money is to go about the means to buy books for the young fellows, books for the elementary level children, because we got one as young as 6 years old, and the middle school guys, as well as the senior high guys. And so that's something that that he said he's going to look into, and we're going to pursue that. And I'll end it from there. And that's basically how things went as far as this week is concerned. Thanks for listening.
Well, I won't say congrats, but at least that is a commendation to Mr. Phillips, Mr. Clark, retired firefighter, going out there and addressing what I think flagrant white supremacy racism, with them not wanting to hire no black people to work in the fire department, from what he shared with us, even sounding like they shared context to let them, or to incorporate the entire history of not hiring black people for some of those jobs, and even incorporating some of this we talked about this so many times and in so many locations. He's in Florida, but we just talked about some of these same issues. We were in Michigan, and they were talking about how they had all the nice jobs, pension, stability. You can work, 2-3 years, take care of yourself and your family, your children, all that good, grandchildren, or if it's just you, no problem. great life, car, house, all that good stuff. Be doing well. Have summer vacation, all that good stuff. But, training facilities for those jobs, that's not where the niggers live. We don't recruit where the niggers live. Same thing with, ain't no black people at all. Man, almost seemed like you did it on purpose. Well, he said they brought all the black people. We're going to look at it, and it was just by the numbers, and nobody. Same thing they say with the voting rights. Nobody's racist. We just went by, the numbers. Get the best candidate for the job. Even might be something about how the numbers are accumulated. Might be some racism there. Even who determines what numbers are assigned to the candidates. Might be some racism there. But bravo, all three of you are three privileged black males to show up and call attention and with correct expectations. That he didn't expect for them to come out and say, well, we're going to hire 50 black people today as a result of you all coming down. And they expected there'll probably be more discussions, more work to do. But at minimum, I always think that racists, a big part of what they do is being able to snicker and joke that I mistreated them. They didn't even know. They're so stupid, black people. Once we have made them, or we know what you're up to, we're calling attention to it, that generally makes them a little more hesitant about things that they're doing. Especially if it's like, we're not going to hire no niggers for the fire department. Like, man, come on, y'all been doing this forever. Let's see, and then certainly getting the little people, or young people, I won't say. Well, he did say some of them are 6. That's kind of small. Getting books for the young people. Bravo on that effort. Certainly, they do so many different types of activities and bringing folks in to speak to the young people and talking about different things and talking about real world events so that they can hopefully make better decisions. But man, being able to get a few books in their hands, or at least thinking about reading, because they have so many different types of books. They have books by football players and brain damage. They got books about Florida, and books about Miami, and books about climate change in Miami. They have books about so many different things that it would have to be where we can find some things to start piquing their interest, getting them to read, talking about what they read. That might even work against when they were talking about people don't speak as much. That might be related to people not reading as much. I'm not drawing a causation link, but I'm just saying, hey, there are a lot of reports that suggest that people don't do too much reading now. I'm not counting the text messages, since they said the texting is emojis and lol and one word other. That ain't reading. That ain't reading. Since people don't do too much reading, man, that might have a whole lot of impacts on our usage of language. So bravo on that. Like, wow, even going to the library so they can be kind of see, like, do you all get to go to the library? Do you go to the library, go to try to get books that you're interested in? Do you have a favorite author? Like, do you have books at your house? Do your parents, do they go to the library just to even get books for themselves, just to see? Unfortunately, white people, they have done a job on us so that we don't read. We don't look for books. In fact, a lot of us might not even have a library or a bookstore to be looking for in our immediate environment. So, encourage for young people, if you're around young black people, encouraging them to read, promoting reading, promoting books, and you yourself, you read. If you're an older black person around them, you reading, you have books. So I'm sure there are tons of children. They see us watching TV all the time and all kinds of things. Make sure that they can see you reading a book. If it's on a Kindle, a for real book, electronic book, but I am reading something. Even listening to an audio book together I've talked about that for a long time, since we do that on a weekly basis, Catherine Massey Book Club every Friday. But even listening to an audio book, they have tons of them where you can be age appropriate. I didn't say you had to get like Urugu or the most difficult thing ever, But you can get age-appropriate books that are even about racism that you could listen to with a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old. You could listen and you all could discuss together. Beautiful. So all of us, if you're an attempted parent or if you work in a program that's constructed and you work with little people, any age, 6 to 16, you work with young folks, make sure incorporate some activities. We promote reading. Even if it's, hey, we don't have it in the budget. Retired firefighters say, I can, give up a few nickels. We can make that a part of our literary budget. Even if you don't have that, see if, can we at least get to the library? If we can't get the whole group to the library, maybe at least one or two of us, we can go get an account. We go to the library and we bring a few books in. But something to promote reading. I think we hear from Bay Area Mom and so many other black educators, deliberately so, why it's this way. The people most to blame are classified as white, but you have so many black children, non-white children who have difficulties reading, can't read on level, and this has been the case for years. Doing a little teaspoon that we can to work against that. And letting them see you read. I can't emphasize that enough. Same thing like when they talk about the cell phone usage for young people, making sure that the young people do not see you glued to your phone all day long, even when you're supposed to be talking to them. You setting a good example. Same thing. I don't see mom and dad glued to the phone all the time. In fact, I see them pick up a book from time to time and sit quietly and read. Sometimes they even tell me I can't watch no TV because they read. They make me turn off TV and read too. I hate it. Ugh.
Can I include one more?
Yes, sir.
One more thing. Yeah. Also, we go on field trips. I think I mentioned we go. It's a friend of Mr. Clark who has like a mansion, and inside of this place he has his mother and father. They're pretty old. Hopefully they're still there. Of course he's married, that sort of thing, and along with that there's other children who show up there also. And just have a big talk about employment, that sort of thing. Everybody gets a chance to talk. Also, there's two guys that I coached when they were in high school. One of them is a realtor. I'm going to bring him in. The other guy, he played in the National Football League for about somewhere between 10 to 12 years. He was the second highest paid player on the team with the Detroit Lions. And right now what he does, he's in the coffee business, and he basically has a contract with the Miami Dolphins as far as feeding them. I'm pretty sure there's others that does that, but he's actually one of these people also with his company. He comes in and when they're in camp, and basically brings the Miami Dolphins food, that sort of thing. So I'm gonna bring him in, also to speak with them, and they know how to do it. They may talk about football, but for the most part, 90% of their talk will be about other things as far as employment is concerned, and behavior, that sort of thing. It'd be far more than football, because I know the kids would ask questions about them doing that. But that'd be my means to draw their attention. And then it would also be educated on other alternatives than to be involved in that dangerous activity. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great effort. Many, many more important things to discuss. He said that coffee reminded me of Dr. Welsing, but many more important things to discuss than white ball games, certainly. especially for young children. Like, man, protect your brain computer. Protect your brain computer. That would be the big one. Like, man, you smack another. Certainly don't be choking out your black friends and teammates, dropping them on their face or head, or bopping them in the head. Try to avoid all of those activities. Protect your brain computer. That would be a big one. Maybe even avoid all the tackle football if you can. Protect your brain computer. Leave all that to Pat Mahomes and such. Tua Tagovailoa. So he messed his brain computer up too. They get books about that. What's up with him, man? He got to wear all that funny helmet and everything, and his fingers was doing all that. What's up? Yes, we go read about that. Yes, how dangerous is tackle football? Yes. Love it. Love it. Keep up the constructive work, retired firefighter in Florida. For other folks, if they have anything, we'll give them like 5 minutes, see if they have commentary to share. I will make sure I get in the young fella's name. It was Malachi Biggs. Malachi Biggs, freshman at Delaware State, which might be an HBCU. I'm not sure. I have to double check on that. But Malachi Biggs is the young privileged black male's name, who being coached by former NFL player wide receiver Deshaun Jackson. I'll read a teaser word, the dog mentality. They were supposed to be physical. But young Mr. Biggs, he alleges that the Delaware State Hornets, that he suffered injuries in a bloody locker room altercation with a teammate last season and filed a lawsuit alleging that they had a gang-associated mentality among the players. He says that 3 days before the MEAC Championship, MEAC Championship game in November, Anthony Hebert, Hebert, black male, put him in a chokehold and ignored his attempts to tap out, submit. Instead, after Biggs lost consciousness, the lawsuit claims that Hebert dropped him hard on the locker room floor. I already told you about he ended up cracking his jaw and all this other, not lacerated his tongue, and it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so the lawsuit charges negligence against the university, Jackson, football operations director Jane Hicks, and assistant coach Travis Clark. Clark coaches the team's safeties, the position played by both Hebert and Biggs. And I mean, man, like I said, I've seen this sort of thing before. They had the hazing incident in Louisiana not that long ago where a young black male was killed, and just, man, if you know any young people and they are in football, I cannot encourage enough. Protect your brain computer, but avoid all of that horseplay and wrestling, because it's way too many reports of they got the on field where somebody gets killed and you broke somebody's neck and all the rest of it too. But this is in the, like I said, he choked out his teammate. We are supposed to be the ones high fiving. Good interception, man. Good tackle, man. Not go give you a tackle and a hug. No. Not choking. You trying to take my starting spot. Like, what? What? That is like that one. Black culture, because consistently when I see these sort of things, it's one black teammate choking out another black teammate. It's not the black teammate, we're going to go and gang up and get on the white people and get some no, and I'm not saying that would make it any better. I'm just saying black culture again, and it's over and over and over. And for what? A young person, he got to go get all these medical bills and get his mouth that probably can't eat for a good calendar year on my food through a straw. For what? Come on, like, we can do way better. Another illustration, we have not been on our assignment. Perfect, really tragic illustration. Black culture. Ugh, dogman, all of that.
I'm sorry. I was just going to quickly say, unfortunately, it's the HBCU.
Oh, it is Delaware State, the Hornets. That's the
Yes,
HBCU.
Sir.
That's what I thought.
It is.
That's what
the
I
Hornets.
thought. That case with the hazing that I was talking about, that was at an HBCU too. That's what I'm saying. That's black. That's what we go. I'm a save everything. Deshaun Jackson, you coaching the team. That's kind of Fuller's logic. If you the captain, you in charge of the ship. I'm gonna take everything I've learned from being in the NFL and playing all this time. Think he played with all these greats and everything. Made all this money, millions of dollars, and people have seen me act a fool on TV. Okay, I'm gonna go to Negro College, bunch of privileged black males. And what do I want to share with them? Be a dog. And even when I hear that, he got that dog in him. You mean man's best friend? You go and you grab another black male and choke him till he unconscious and then dump him on his face? That sounds exactly like the man's best friend. That's George Floyd. That is George. That's Eric Garner. I can't breathe. He said, I'm trying to tap out. I can't breathe. And throw him on the floor. That's what you went back to a HBCU to instill in these young people? We could do way. We ain't been on our assignment. That's universal man right there. You were going to add retired firefighter?
The HBCUs, that's who they're hiring now. They've been doing that now for about the past 10 years, hiring former black NFL players. Because the NFL does a very poor job, similar to Dade County Fire Department. They do a very poor job of hiring black coaches. Especially guys who played, which you would assume that would be someone who played the sport all of that long time would be eligible to be able to coach the sport as much as they know. If you done went through all of that process from something like 6 years old up into your 30s, but they don't get hired on a just basis, but the HBCUs hire them. Of course, the enforcement of professionalism is not practiced as much as it would be at a larger white populated school, employed school, and that probably would have been one of the reasons why something like that would happen. And when a lawsuit takes place, which they're probably going to win, it's going to really harm that institution, much more than if it would have been at the University of Miami somewhere, or Oklahoma, something like that. But that basically what's taking place. That a lot of things are not it's not as far as rules of practice being practiced as much as it would be at a one of those largest. And certainly they wouldn't mistreat a white player like that. No way that would take place. And unless it's a white person doing it, but it wouldn't be a black person mistreating a white football player like that. That's it.
This worthy of great pity, that is us. Primitive, that is us. Black culture, and the case that I was thinking about, Caleb Wilson, that was from February 2025, so just a little over a year ago. That was at Southern University, the only HBCU in Louisiana. That's what I almost make it sound like to me. Matter of fact, the incident in Florida with the marching band, that was at an HBCU. That's what I'm saying. That's black culture. Almost make it seem like, there's going to be a whole lot of black people around. Run the other way. You better get 2 or 3 white people in there to make everybody behave. somebody get killed. That's embarrassing. That's an absolute disgrace. Caleb, when he was 20, he didn't just get his dentures fractured. He was killed by his black brothers. That's for real, because that was not the football team. That was a fraternity. So his black brothers, literally, love you so much, I got to kill you, black brother. Pow! And punched him to death. Person that dialed in lost the switchboard, talking about the hazing primitiveness. The person who dialed in, our caller in Florida, do you have commentary to share?
Yes, sir. May I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to the host, the listeners, and callers. Thank you very much for the program, Gus. And this is the first time I've heard about that story and many of the other information. That is just very just saddening to hear. Just how, and I think there are a lot of that or those kinds of interactions going on amongst many black people. And I wanted to mention that the part about the wills, it reminded me of how there were people who were calling to the courthouse about asking if there were wills recorded. And, you know, it comes down to whether, you know, what county you're in and all kind of stuff. And, you know, they seem like they weren't really all the way informed about the person's will and, you know, when does it get filed and everything. And, you know, they have to come in and file it themselves. And there was an issue where there was a coworker that hadn't been doing her job right. Another one of the white women clique members, and you know that I think she lost a will or whatever, and tried to blame it on the post office. And at the time, it was black people working at that post office. So I remember having to speak up, like, no, like I brought that envelope back in here. So I believe it ended up to a point to where it was a white attorney that ended up coming up to the civil counter, I think bringing up the point about something similar about the issue of a will not being recorded and things like that. So I think that had been an issue if I hadn't shared that on workplace racism. And I wanted to also mention with the news story about that the shooter or the person that they suspect did a shooting toward the president or at the hotel or whatnot is very interesting. You know, like the comparing and contrast with how if someone is, I guess, white or non-white, or if it's someone non-white, they go into so much detail, like with the footage that I noticed when I was looking at some of the news reports. They showed some of the blurry footage. They showed more clear footage, other detailed footage. And it was someone I even seen made a post about the suspect even worked here at the, or in, you know, in this city in Gainesville, Florida, at the University of Florida on the Gators basketball team or something. So I was like, man, this is so much detail. And I wanted to end out by mentioning, I think I spoke about this white person. He was a white juvenile at the time. Back in 2012, it was a shooting at the Ohio, or a high school called Chardon High School in Ohio, state of Ohio, and the guy name is T.J. Lane, and he wore a shirt right to the sentencing. So he was sentenced to 3 life sentences, 3 consecutive life sentences. So this white kid He was 17 at the time. It's written killer on his shirt. And he came in there, he was smirking, smiling. You know, it said it was on March 19, 2013. And he made this comment toward the victim's family, that of the three, I think it was other 3 students that he killed. And it says, and then when I looked it up again, it says that he said, "This hand that pulled the trigger that killed your sons now masturbates to the memory. F all of you." And and it's a video with him saying that too. And this was someone white, classified as white. And I just don't remember that being on the news much. But that's the comment he made before they sentenced him. He was like 17 years old. So that's all I have to share. Thanks for allowing me to speak.
That is wild. I don't remember that case either. But they got it. The BBC, they got pictures and all the rest of it. I don't remember that at all. I suspect if that had been like me or Leroy, woo-wee, boy, they'd had to put us in like protective custody. Like they'd have burned the jail down. It's like, what? You done came out of... Well, what does it mean to be white? I hope they got that recorded. He trying to get like probation or early release or something like that. Compassionate, really, like, oh no, remember what you said? See, no compassion. Get on back in there and serve full sentence. Now he said, working at the courthouse, that they get those type of suspicious calls where people will ring up there and it seems like they're trying to fish and get details for the will. I'm not surprised at all. Same type of thing, because they said in that report, that was in New York, he's in Florida, he was saying the same type of thing where people, they go and they'll just, let's look online, let's see, maybe they're behind their taxes. They'll go and see if they can sleuth and get whatever kind of data that they can, and then maybe they can go and start talking to some of the relatives, like, oh, you staying there, blah, 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 and maybe you want to sell the property, blah, 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 blah. Call the courthouse, do whatever you can, get online, and then we go get them, get the rest of that property. Like, yeah. Conniving. Nobody does it better. Even, in fact, the white woman at the courthouse losing it and blaming it on the black people, that's pretty common as well in the workplace, where white people either through their own negligence, incompetence, sloth, whatever you want to call it, ooh, I think I done lost that will. Ooh, she gonna say, I'm gonna blame it on them niggers at the post office. Wait a minute. Like, they done delivered it. The post service didn't lose it. You misplaced it. Like, come on, you got, well, no. I think they might not have brought it in, actually. That's what happened. I done told you, they irresponsible. He said he had to intervene. Like, wait a minute. I did see the envelope. It was delivered. We can't put this on the postal. Nick was hot up here. Get you too. I'm going to blame it on you next. That is standard operating procedure. Worldwide, it seems. Just blame it on the black person. Blame it on the black person. Blame it on the black one. Not that we aren't guilty of that. I told you about the HBCUs and the football, but dang. Protect yourself in the work environment. Get validation when you deliver forms and that sort of thing. That's why they say take the pictures and all of that, because, wow, they will turn around and blame it on us so quick. Come on. Let's see. The wills, that being excellent. I cannot recommend that enough. Get that will. If you have a property, if you have offspring, if you are married, attempted, or if you're over age 30, get that will. Just think of it as minimizing conflict. That way, and minimizing opportunities for racism, where white people can come in and mess over your property and dole it out how they see fit, or even add to the conflict. Get that will together. We will be here at the minimum on Thursday for Neutralizing Workplace Racism, and then the Catherine Massey Book Club on Friday. That's at minimum for this coming week. Catherine Massey Book Club, the new Jim Crow, which just gets more repulsive with each page turn. I even have to add that from yesterday I was saying I thought it was deceitful and inept scholarship to not include Vietnam and how that impacted incarceration and the drug war and drug abuse during this time period that she's talking about, 60s, 70s, 80s. When she says that black people disproportionately benefited from the New Deal, like, that is so, like, out of this world false. I don't even know why she needs to say that in the text. She could have just moved on to the prisons. Like, that's why we reading, getting books for the young people so that we can be more informed. They apparently, white people, they write books about racism that are false. They might even commission racial showcasing victims of racism to write books about racism that are false. We're reading one right now. That's why you don't want to just read one book. Read many books so that you can be informed. This is not the only book out there that talks about the New Deal. There are many. If you've read many, then you'll have a diverse, comprehensive understanding of a variety of subject matter, particularly racism, because that dominates. But man, that's what I mean. Like, it really bothers me. Why is there so much lying to minimize racism? Why is there so much lying that presents racists in a more favorable position? Why is that? I don't, and particularly from the pitiful position that we are in. Does it make sense? We'll continue with our analysis as we go. Fourth worst book I've ever read. That can be one. If you got some free time this week, investigate that. Is that true? Did black people disproportionately benefit from the so-called New Deal policies to correct the Great Depression, 1930s? Is that historically accurate? Gus T said, ain't. It's out of this world. False. Like I said, it's so false. Man, why are you lying to us, Michelle Alexander? Cowbell. Any hoodles. Check social media. I will update for other programs before we get to Thursday, Neutralizing Workplace Racism, where we may maybe revisit them blaming the Negro postal workers. That's it. Did we miss anyone? Anybody have anything else they want to get in? Much obliged. Assumed everyone is satisfied. Hopefully, Wi-Fi will be working at the residence soon. Cross my fingers. It has been time. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. I just said weather is getting warm. People are going out to the beach and such. It is May, Cinco de Mayo for some of those. Get out and party, even though that's not like a federal holiday, but still. That is an excuse for a little of the mad dog. Might even be an excuse I got to do a little hazing and choke out a nigger or two. Memorial Day on the horizon, pools opening. Man, black culture is really dangerous. We generally can't even have a party without letting off a shot or two, or as I said, choking a black person out. As such, I would avoid it. The Fullers say no parties. No parties. That's in the code book. 10 stops. No parties. No parties. No parties. We don't even know how to party correctly. No parties. If you got to do all that nonsense, hey, be alert. It would be alert for any and everything. The mad dog runs out. The mad dog is too plentiful. Be alert. The reefer madness commences. Or the other narcotics. Be alert. The name calling commences. Be alert. They got to choke some. Be alert. Negro culture is not constructive. Dare I even say it's unsafe. Be alert. And once it's, gotta, even they get you, because sometimes it's just Celebration. Oh, we got to go do some shooting just because it's black people there. That's a favorite summertime activity. Shoot up the black party, cook-up, BBQ. Sobriety would be best. That way you know it's time to flee. Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying, not all white people are racist. Remind us, stop name-calling people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cow signing out. Malachi Biggs, Caleb Wilson. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. Problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.